Hello everyone, back to today's first video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the month ahead. For today's first video, it's JMA Friday, so as always on a Friday, we're doing our month ahead look ahead. Coming up later on this afternoon, we'll have a look at the weather in detail for the next week to 10 days with the GFS, the ECM and the GEM shorter range models. But this is going through the 30-day forecast with the JMA and CFS V2 models. It'll take us throughout pretty much the whole of September. So it is a bit of a September sort of look ahead. And I'll get on with that for you very shortly. As I say, coming up this afternoon, we're going to have a look at the weather for the next week, 10 days. A big weekend of updates coming up at Halves. I'll talk you through all of those updates at the end of the video. But we'll start off by having a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts for the next 4 weeks, broken down into weekly pairs from the JMA. We're looking at the North Pole view down, so this is the North Pole of the Northern Hemisphere up here. The latitudes of the Northern Hemisphere are around there. Blue is extrapolating to below average heights, which is low pressure. Yellow, orange and red extrapolating to above average heights, which is high pressure. They're broken down into weekly pairs for these charts. So the first week pair will take us from today, 31st of August, last day of meteorological summer, through to the 7th of September. We find that in the week ahead, we've got above average height centred over and to the east and northeast of the British Isles, a large blocking feature with below average heights in the middle of the Atlantic around Greenland, and also some above average heights through the central part of the Atlantic. The flow and the jet is being moved up to there, so it looks like we have a lot of dry weather coming up in the week ahead. High pressure's in control, and we'll be bringing in some pretty warm easterly flows as well, so mainly dry, fine and warm for the first week of September, and this goes on into week 2 as well. This is from the 7th through to the 14th of September, with again above average height centred over and to the east and northeast of the British Isles, at below average heights. Essentially autumn is penned in around Greenland with the jet stream. The jet stream can't get to us, it's pushed up to the north, so unsettled conditions remain around Greenland and Iceland. But for the UK again, and for much of northern Europe, we continue to be bringing in those winds from an easterly direction. Again, a lot of dry and warm weather would be expected there, so a warm and dry first half to September, if the JMA is right. Then weeks 3 and 4 show a change. This is taking us from the 14th through to the 28th of September, with the above average height still there to the northeast, but weakening and being pushed more towards the eastern part of Europe, although it is still ridging into Scandinavia to some degree. Below average heights are appearing in the Atlantic and to the south and west of the country. The flow and the jet, let's get rid of that, the flow and the jet would be doing something a little bit like this. So it's still fairly warmish out. We're still bringing the air up from a southerly or southwesterly direction, but it is certainly turning more unsettled with the below average heights of low pressure out to the west of the southwest. We would be getting more influence from the Atlantic, so it would be turning more unsettled, but still relatively warm with the air mass. The air is still sort of from a southerly type direction, but certainly breaking down and turning more unsettled through the second half of September. Let's have a look at the tropical and mid-latitude view to confirm this in terms of the temperature and precipitation anomalies. So a reminder of the week 1 500 millibar height anomaly. British Isles is just here in the top right-hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it. So we've got the above average heights over and then extending back to the east and northeast of the country, with below average heights penned in around Greenland and Iceland. We can't see the North Pole or Scandinavia particularly well on this view, but then we don't have to because we've already seen that view from the North Pole down. So the temperature anomaly in the week ahead is coming out above average. Not a huge deviation, but it's certainly coming out on the milder and average side for the UK and for Ireland. Many central parts of Europe also coming out with above average temperature anomalies this week. Precipitation anomalies also in the week ahead, the 31st of August to 7th of September. They're coming out drier than average, so relatively dry and quite warm first week to September. And then it goes on into week 2 as well. This again is the 500 millibar height anomaly for the 7th through to the 14th of September, with above average heights again over and to the north and northeast of the country. It's high pressure back there to Scandinavia, and so we bring the air in again from an easterly direction. You can see over here again we will be bringing the air in from an easterly direction. Temperature anomalies remain slightly above average, not as hot as it has been through the earlier part of the summer. Certainly through most of the summer we're seeing these temperature anomalies between around 1 and 3 degrees above average. We've not got that kind of anomaly, but still a little bit on the milder than average side for week 2, and also still looking pretty dry as well. Most places coming out drier than average. Notice it is turning a bit wetter than average to our south though, possibly some thunder getting going to the south of the country, and also here across central parts of Europe. So to our south it looks like it's beginning to break a little bit there from the 7th to the 14th, but we still hang on to the high pressure more or less and keep things reasonably dry. But then we do see a change as we go through to weeks 3 and 4. This from the 14th to the 28th of September. The below average heights are coming back to the west-southwest of the country, with the above average heights being pushed into eastern and possibly even southeastern parts of Europe. That is a change, and it is implying that although the wind remains from a southerly or southwesterly direction, some sort of breakdown is likely to be taking place there. The temperature anomaly is still holding up above average just about, although Ireland actually is going a little bit cooler than average, but most places still holding up just a little bit above average with those temperature anomalies. The main difference is in precipitation, as we find particularly Ireland, England and Wales going wetter than average. Scotland still just about holding on to drier than average conditions. Notice many parts of Europe also going wetter than average through this second half of September. Now, maybe this is a 2-week period, so it is a bit transitional. Could be that week 3 is still just about holding on to dry conditions, particularly for Scotland, and then maybe by week 4 we have a complete breakdown across all parts of the country and we turn it much more unsettled. You can never rule out a scenario like that with a 2-weekly anomaly, but for the 2 weeks as a whole it does look as though it is turning more unsettled, particularly focusing on England and Wales. So that's how the JMA is looking. What about the CFS V2? Is that in agreement for this sort of month of 2 halves scenario that we see with the JMA? Well, these are the 500 millibar heights from the CFS V2. Break it down into week periods. The first week period takes us from the 31st of August to the 6th of September. Identical to the JMA, we've got the above average heights extending into the UK, but also backing up to the northeast as well. There's some above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic going over towards Newfoundland, with below average heights up around Greenland and Iceland, and that leaves us on the warm side of the jet. The jet's being pushed off up to the north. We're probably bringing in a lot of easterly winds there, so it is mostly dry and it's quite warm through the first week of September. And this goes on into week 2 as well, same as with the JMA. They're both in agreement for the first half of September to be dominated by high pressure. The 7th to the 13th of September sees the high pressure centred over Scandinavia. Again, we're bringing in those winds from an easterly direction. If that was in the middle of winter, that would be seen in a really cold outlook, by the way. That sort of thing you're looking for in January, a big blocking area of high pressure over Scandinavia and easterly winds. That would be bitterly cold in the middle of winter. But of course, it's still late summer, September, so not going to be cold. Actually, it's going to be quite warm and pretty dry with those easterly winds. This is how week 3 is looking. It's the 14th to the 20th of September. Above average height still there towards Scandinavia, but possibly also ridging to the north and northwest of the country. So bringing in this slack easterly flow still to the south. It's possibly turning a little bit more unsettled there as pressure is weakening, but still more or less we're hanging on to the anticyclonic high pressure signal. And then we go through to week 4, which is the 21st through to 27th of September. High pressure is strengthening over Scandinavia again, can you believe? The below average heights around Greenland and Iceland. A little bit of a battle going on here, I think. Again, that high pressure is still trying to bring me dry and warm easterly winds into the UK, but this low pressure in the Atlantic is also trying to bring a breakdown in from off the Atlantic. Now, we know that the JMA actually does want to break down the fine weather in the second half of September. That CFS is inconclusive, though. It could go either way. You could possibly see that ridge over Scandinavia being pushed back to Eastern Europe and Western Russia, allowing the low pressure in. Alternatively, you could see the low pressure continue to be penned in around Greenland and Iceland. So it's very difficult to say which way that will go. But I suppose it is implying that there could be a little bit of a breakdown in the second half of September, which, again, is along the same lines of the JMA, but not quite going as far as the JMA. Temperature anomalies are looking like this. Week 1 temperature anomalies are coming out close to, or maybe a little bit cooler than average for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for England and Wales still warmer than average. Most parts of Europe also looking really warm in the week ahead. And then week 2, which is the 7th to 13th of September, that comes out significantly warmer than average for the UK, for Ireland, and for much of Northern Europe as well. So really warm week there in the second week of September. Week 3 is also warmer than average, with those easy winds, above average temperature anomalies taking place then. And then week 4 rounds it all off with above average temperature anomalies. How often have we said this? During this summer, the prolonged warm spell goes on, albeit not as hot in terms of the anomalies to average as in the main part of the summer, but nevertheless, still the warm spell goes on really throughout September with the CFS V2. Rainfall-wise, or precipitation-wise, so the week ahead is coming out significantly drier than average for the UK and for Ireland and for much of Northern Europe as well, dominated by that area of high pressure over Scandinavia. Week 2 is also coming out much drier than average, especially for northern parts of the country. Week 3, the signal is weakening, as it very often does. In the third week, it's much weaker signal. That could be because it's turning a bit more unsettled and precipitation anomalies are shifting from drier than average to average, or it could just be that the model is losing the signal. Week 4, rounding it all off, again, very weak signals, close to average. If anything, you'd probably say northern parts of the country, hinting at being a little bit drier than average again, perhaps, in week 4. But I do think weeks 3 and 4 are always weak with those precipitation anomalies, and so we can't say definitively whether that second half of September is just average or whether it's a little bit more unsettled compared to what was going on in the first half of the month. So that rounds it all up, and they're both in agreement. Both models are in agreement for the first half of September, which is going to be dominated by high pressure. Going to be a lot of dry, fine and warm weather through the first 2 weeks of September if these models are correct. No reason to believe they're not, because that's the way the shorter range models are trending, and we'll have a look at those shorter range models a little bit later on this afternoon. The uncertainty is in the second half of September. Are we going to just extend this dry, fine and warm weather out into the second half of the month and just have basically a dry and warm September? Or will we see a change in the second half of the month, where we have a month of 2 halves, with the first half dry and warm, the second half cooler and more unsettled? It remains to be seen how that's going to play out. And of course, we've got to get the September forecast together probably on Monday. So I think we're going to have problems there, certainly for the second half of September. Right, so that's how JMA Friday is looking this week. Do it all over again next week. And then later on this afternoon, we've got your week to 10 day video update coming up. Weekend updates, I promise you, I'll tell you what's coming up over the weekend. So tomorrow, we're going to have a weekend broadcast. We'll have a look at the weather next week to 10 days in detail as well. And Terry Scoley's September forecast will be tomorrow, and maybe some thoughts about the autumn as well. And then on Sunday, it's the big one. We've got your first winter 2018-19 update. We're going to be doing winter updates every week from this Sunday through to the final Sunday of November. So going to be a long season of winter updates. It all begins to kick off yet again on Sunday. So do come back for that then if you're interested in following the storyline for the winter 2018-19 updates. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.